What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So the election is over. President-elect Trump will be inaugurated on January 20th. And I want to talk about some of these different proposals that he has out there. But I want to talk about one specific one today, and that is no tax on tips. So we're going to look at the pros and the cons, and we'll see if this is really good for service workers or if there's some cons in there that would make this really not desirable. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video. And if you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. So if you've been following the election, you know that President-elect Trump was talking on the campaign trail about no tax on tips. He was saying this in Nevada. He was saying it all over the U.S. And so what does this really mean? That's what we're going to take a look at. So let's start with some of the pros. So the first pro is increased take-home pay. And so if you don't have to pay taxes on your tips, then you're going to have more money in your pocket. So you'll have more money to spend. This could help stimulate the economy, so this could be a good thing. And pro number two, simplified tax reporting. So exempting tips from taxation could reduce the complexity of tax filings for both employees and employers. So the bottom line is when it comes to filing your taxes, it would be a little bit easier if you didn't have to calculate your tips and bring those in and all that. And so it would make it a little more streamlined and less headache for you as well as your employer. And pro number three, enhanced employee satisfaction. And so if you're earning more money, you're probably going to be happier with your job. Your performance might increase, especially if there's no tax on tips. You might really be motivated to do an excellent job. That way you'll get larger tips. Now, those are some of the pros when it comes to no tax on tips. But now I want to talk about some of the cons when it comes to no taxes on tips. And con number one, revenue loss. In a situation where you're no longer paying taxes on your tips, the federal government could face a significant decrease in tax revenue, potentially affecting public services and programs. So we could see a major impact on things like public roads, bridges, things like that, where the federal government will come in with money, but they're going to have less money, less revenue, because you're no longer paying taxes on that. So you have a segment of the population that's no longer paying taxes on their tips. And so that means less money going into the federal government. And less money going into our government would mean that the federal government would have to make cuts to different programs. And it might actually raise our national debt because we have less money coming in, which means you can't pay all those bills. And some of those bills will just be added to the debt. Con number two, equity concerns. Now, this could be an underlying problem that we could see. High-income individuals might exploit the exemption by reclassifying portions of their income as tips to avoid taxes. And so let's go through a scenario. Let's say you have an attorney, they're doing work for you, and you pay that attorney $1,000. And that attorney says, you know what, pay me $1,000 and then give me a $4,000 tip, and that would satisfy the services that I provided you. Now they'll take that $1,000, they have to pay taxes on the $1,000, but guess what? They don't have to pay taxes on the remaining $4,000 because that's a tip. And so that's how we could see some people, high earners, that will really take advantage of this and really exploit it. And so it's not going to be just those people that are, waiters and waitresses. You can have other jobs that will reclassify the way that they receive money. And they'll say we receive some in tips and then we receive the rest in a salary. And so yet again, this could be an opportunity for wealthy people to really make out like bandits in this no tax for tips. Now, con number three, administrative challenges. And so logistically, this would be a nightmare for the IRS as well as employers. Implementing and enforcing such a tax exemption could introduce new complexities and loopholes in the tax system. And one thing that you would have to think about, especially if you're a small business owner, now you're going to have to separate the tips from the salary or the hourly wage. And so you're going to have new software in order to do that. And not to mention, you're going to have the IRS peeking into your books. They're going to want to know what's going on because they know that some people will be trying to exploit this, just like I gave you the example of the attorney. And so the IRS will be really focusing on businesses, corporations, as well as small businesses to find out if they're cooking the books. And the fourth and final con, this would have a major impact on Social Security and Medicare. And so if we're talking about no taxes on tips, that means no taxes at all. So no income tax as well as no payroll tax. So if payroll taxes are also exempt, it could reduce funding for Social Security and Medicare, potentially jeopardizing these programs' sustainability. Now, I'm going to show you an illustration, and I'll show you as far as payroll tax, how this can impact you in the future, as well as impact the people who are currently receiving Social Security benefits and Medicare. So let's break this down. Let's say you have a service worker here. She's receiving a tip. She's a waitress. And then you also have a construction worker. The construction worker is not receiving any tips. So let's say every day, both of them earn $100. Now, 20 of the dollars that the waitress earns, that's her hourly wage. And then $80, that goes to her tips. When it comes to the construction worker, all $100 is his hourly wage. So let's break it down this way. Payroll taxes, you're paying 6.2%. Now, I won't go over Medicare. Medicare, you pay a percentage as well, but it works in a very similar fashion. So we'll just go over Social Security. 6.2% is what you contribute. So 6.2% of $20, and so that 6.2% goes to your employer. Your employer matches that 6.2% for a total of 12.4%. That is what your employer has to pay or send out to the Social Security Administration. And so that's how it works. So if we're looking at this, and let's clean the screen up a little bit, if we have $80 here, that's for tips again, and then you have $20. So you have $20 coming from the waitress going to the employer, and then you have $100 coming from the construction worker going to the employer. Now, the construction worker is paying 6.2% on that total $100, whereas the waitress is only paying 6.2% on the $20. Now, the employer also is matching that 6.2%, but it's only on $20 for the waitress. So the employer likes this. They have to contribute less to the Social Security Administration based on this. And then the tax just go right in to the waitress's pocket. When it comes to the construction worker, he's earning $100 a day. He's paying, contributing 6.2% to Social Security ultimately. And then the employer is also matching that 6.2% for the $100. And so now let's look at the bigger picture. This money goes to the Social Security Administration. The Social Security Administration sends this money over to the trust fund. That trust fund is used to pay out benefits for people who are currently receiving Social Security. However, if we are in a situation where they make changes now, and this waitress only has to contribute 6.2% of her $20, well, that's less money going to the trust fund, which means ultimately the trust funds will be depleted. And we know already in about 10 years, the Social Security trust funds, the two trust funds, they will be depleted. And what that would mean is a 23% cut across the board for people receiving Social Security benefits. So if this were enacted and we had no taxes for service workers, well, guess what? They're not going to have to pay taxes on all of their income. They're only going to pay taxes on their hourly wage or their salary. And so, yes, it's good for them because they put an extra $80 in their pocket, or she would put an extra $80 in her pocket in this situation. But ultimately, it's going to hurt those people who are retired. And then, if you want to go a step further, it's also going to hurt the waitress. Because as we stated, if she's able to put $80 in her pocket and only contribute $20 to her employer, have her employer match that, and then send that over to the trust fund, guess what? When it comes time for her to retire, they're going to look at her contributions and they're going to take her 35 highest earning years. And when they do the calculations, she's not going to be receiving that much in Social Security benefits as a result of this, because it's showing her income as a lot lower than what it actually is. Because if she's receiving that $80 tip and she gets to keep that in her pocket, then she's only going to be contributing $20. And so hopefully that makes sense. So you can see short term, yes, for service workers, it's going to help them. They're going to have more money in their pocket right away. But long term, this can impact their Social Security benefits. It will also impact people currently receiving Social Security benefits. And the only one that really makes out good on this whole situation is the corporation or even the small business, because now they don't have to pay as much in taxes over to the Social Security Administration, and they don't really have to worry about anything after that, because it's going to be all on the waiter or the waitress or the service employee to set aside money. So let's say in that scenario where you have $100, well, what that service worker is going to have to do is set aside part of that $80 for their retirement, because when they get to the point where they want to retire, their Social Security is going to be very, very low, and they're going to have additional money in place in order to help them. So, and I'm not just talking about 401k, that would be something different. They're going to have another retirement plan set up because Social Security is going to be not even half of what it should be if they were paying into that payroll tax at 100% and they didn't have a situation where they weren't paying taxes on tips. So hopefully this makes sense. If you guys have any questions, let me know down below. And I want you guys to decide in the comments, do you think this is a good idea, no tax on tips, or do you think it's a bad idea? Talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.